will talk about how fashion will evolve and partly about leadership in crisis. So this is a very interesting stats. It's very recent, so it will be good for each one of you to understand what's happening. If you see the data on this chart, you'll see that the global apparel market has literally shrunk in this period between 2020 and what is going to be the state in the coming years. So global apparel markets have come down from $1635 billion to $1280 billion. So that's a drop of 22%. That's humongous in any particular year because the world has only seen an upwardly moving trend in the last 2 decades. It's never seen this kind of situation. Of course, the consumption is expected to reach a pre-COVID level over the next couple of years and then continue to grow. So we are projecting 3.5% CAGR. That's the compound annual growth rate over the next 4 years. We are at 21 now. So we expect that by 2025 we will come to a level of 2007 kind of number in terms of the overall market for global apparel market. Which is what concerns most of you. I know that some of you are doing jewelry design, some of you are doing interior design, but for the people who are in fashion, global fashion, this will have a great day. And $2,000 billion, if you're talking about $2 trillion, it's a very big industry. It's a huge industry. One of the biggest industries in the world is the textile and apparel industry. So, in a sense, you are in the right place because you're not in an industry which is small or minuscule, you're in an industry which has really got huge global influence. So, you are in the right place. You've got to make sure that the industry starts picking up positively and therefore there's good opportunities for going here. Does anyone know what is the population of planet Earth? Did you say? Yeah. Each about 7.3 billion. So imagine in a world of 7.4 billion people, 3.4 billion people are engaged in this industry. Which means we are talking about roughly more than 40-45% of the global workforce in the world. 430 billion are thought to work in fashion and textile production. So global workforce is about 40-45 and almost, I would say, an eighth of it is the textile industry. So 430 out of 7 billion is what is the percentage? Roughly about how much is it? 5%? Roughly 5%. So 5% of the global workforce is engaged in this industry. This roughly means that 1 out of 8 workers in the world is involved in global fashion. That's huge. Type of work ranges from sewing machines, farming, processing, textile, weaving, finishing, supply chain, the last mile connect, and so much more. Forestry also, not just farming, it includes forestry because like pulp operations is entirely forestry. And what is interesting is that much of this workforce is in Asia. So, and even the growth in the future years, when you see that 3.5% CAGR growth, most of it is coming in Asia, not in the Western developed world, not in the US, not in Europe itself. Excellent. The fashion industry, if you look today, over the last many years, has focused much around China. As you all know, China is a global force to reckon with. The COVID pandemic has, one would have thought, would have sent them back a lot, but it hasn't. They bounced back very fast. Almost, if you look at Bangladesh, it's a country which is a fraction of the size of India, but it has an apparel industry which is bigger than India. Something which they can be really justifiably proud of. 25% of Bangladesh GDP comes from the apparel industry. and 80% of exports of that output comes from ready-made garments. It provides employment to 20 million people. So a good percentage of people living in Bangladesh are actually employed by the apparel and garment industry. China is, of course, the largest textile garment producer in the world, 7 times the size of Bangladesh. But between the two of them, they now account for almost 40-45% of the global apparel business. And India is not left behind. Despite all the advantages India has, it has got left behind in the last several decades. So, I'm going to ask this question to you guys, and any of you can respond. What do you think the industry will look like? What are going to be the major trends, themes? Anyone can answer.
I'm Deepa. I'm not sure, I'm just taking a guess.
Don't worry. They're not sure about whether we are alive tomorrow.
I'm hoping it would move towards more customized fashion rather than mass production.
Excellent. Yes, you're right. It will. What else? Okay, anyone else? Come on! It's a bright group of people.
My name is Nausheen, and I think people will more focus on sustainable and ethical fashion.
Excellent. Absolutely. Thank you, Nausheen. And thank you, Deepa. Anyone else? So we have two things, customized clothing, and we have got sustainable clothing. Anything else? So the trends that we see going forward is fast fashion, athleisure, eco-friendly and sustainable, as Nausheen said, customized fashion products, as Deepa said, and fashion going digital, which is partly what you mentioned. It's really, that's the future, that everything moves digitally forward. And of course, a huge slew of diversified products. So this is really the way we envisage the future of fashion to be. We're talking about 5-10 years, we're not talking about 20-30 years from now. So it's a period which will be relevant to all of you as you finish your education and you go out into either doing something on your own or working for a corporate. What is the difference today? When we talk of fast fashion, what are we talking about? So, I've presented you here with two perspectives. A snapshot of what was yesterday's closet and what is going to be today's closet. So apparel is a durable item in the context of where we are today. Seasonal shopping to fill gaps in wardrobe and replace worn items, which is the way it has been for the last couple of decades. And wardrobe is mostly practical staples with a few special occasional items. I mean, this is the way I have grown up, this is the way, a generation before me or the one before have grown up. But there is going to be a big change with the millennials now. And what we see is the trend today's closet is that apparel has become a disposable item. So it's not that I want my shirt to last for 10 years. In fact, now today, the young people will probably not wear a garment for more than a couple of times and they'll probably dispose it of. And it's no longer about seasonal shopping, it's about all occasion-led shopping. Buy now, wear now, shop to capture bargains, chase trends is what the millennials are doing now and also the Gen X is doing. And wardrobe is abundant, eclectic in features, many impractical, infrequently worn items. My daughter is a great example of this. Her whole room is filled with clothes, which I don't even know whether she uses or not. So I have a daughter who's India's leading classic rock singer. So many of you can follow her if you want. So this is really the trend. And she's not a millennial, she's 34 years old. So emergence of fast fashion has led to proliferation of designs and transition of apparel to a disposable item. This is very, very clearly a trend today. And leisure. I think all of you can relate to this. I'm sure all of you. I see all of you really toned up bodies, you're all fit. With the pandemic on, it has just taken off. It sort of exploded. This is the trend today. No formal clothes, no jackets, no formal trousers. So it's all about casual, athleisure, loungewear, etc. This is going to rising sports culture, growing number of clubs, increased emphasis on fitness, but not only the urban population, it really is relevant even for tier 3, tier 4 towns. Additionally, sportswear is also becoming increasingly used in casual environment as part of athleisure clothing, and it's acceptable. So the rise of the fit consumer in the quantified self will continue to support growth in this segment of the market. Eco-friendly and sustainable. I don't really think I need to say much because all of you must be getting a lot of dose of that from your faculty, that the whole world is moving more and more towards sustainable clothing. And when we say sustainable clothing, we are not just talking about natural fibers. People think that natural fibers, of course, are the most sustainable because they are biodegradable, they are comfortable. So whether it's cotton, whether it's linen, whether it is wool, whether it is jute, these are all natural fibers. Viscose is a man-made fiber but comes from natural sources, which is wood pulp from the forest. Polyester, acrylic, nylon, polypropylene, which are the more prevalent fibers, come from petrochemical feedstocks. So, as all of you know, polyester is made from purified terephthalic acid and monoethylene glycol. Nylon is made from caprolactam. Acrylic fiber is made from acrylonitrile monomer. So, these come from cracker plants. So, you have the refineries converting the crude into naphtha primarily. Then you have the crackers which convert naphtha into various forms of intermediate products, ethylene, propylene, propane, which get used to make these fibers. But interestingly, the twist is it's really not only about natural, it is about circularity, it's about recycling. So polyester, for instance, and I'm the first guy to have done it in this country. We converted bottle grade PET, we converted X-ray films, we converted audio films, which all had a polyester base, into final finished polyester chips, and those chips using a vented extruder were made into fiber or film. Yeah, some in virgin form, some in colored form. And I did this in the year 1989-90. Sorry. Yeah, 1991, which is 30 years ago. Whereas the trend for bottle grade polymers, etc., in India particularly, is taken off. And obviously, there was no collection system, but we did have PET bottles. In 1990, we had only glass bottles. We didn't even have aluminum cans then. So you had only glass bottles for Pepsi and Coke. We used to import used PET bottles all the way from the US West Coast and East Coast to Chennai. I had a factory in Chennai where we used to convert it into PET bottle grade chips and then extrude it into fiber. And interestingly, when we used to use audio tapes and we used to use video tapes, we could recover silver and gold. So we could recover 99.9% silver and gold from the refineries we set up to recover from these films. So, but today the whole scenario has changed. Early adopters of recycled materials and organic cotton usage in apparel is a trend. Commitment to use fair trade certified factories. A good example of this is Patagonia. You must have heard of Patagonia, all of you. And also the North Face. The North Face is for all these guys who go on adventure. They've got these jackets. This is a very interesting jacket. This is used, it's called a Denali jacket, uses recycled yarns. Yarn recovered from fabric scraps and recycled bottles, like I told you just now. And yarn with very low water usage and dye, which means they are environmentally sustainable even from a point of view of water use. And so there is a rising need for eco-friendly products, and apparel companies are fast embracing this trend. Customized fashion products, Deepa talked about this. This is going to be the trend of the future. Personalized and customized tailoring, custom tailored merino wool products made on demand using 3D knitting machines. All of you know about the 3D technology now. Anyone can make anything that you want for yourself. Interestingly, what we thought would disappear, which is the tailors, actually may have a fresh lease of life because of what we call bespoke clothing. So, not everyone wants to wear what a Zara spews out, or a H&M, or a Marks and Spencer, they would like something very, very customized. I have to survive in my linen business using bespoke tailoring because I have to make things very, very special uniquely for customers who want to stand out, who want to be different, who want to be completely different from the rest. So product personalization is increasingly being preferred by customers with brands providing multiple avenues. So, we talk about the 360-degree approach, so we talk about overall customer experience across all channels and across all kind of interfaces you have. It could be offline, online, could be e-commerce, or it could be a slew of these interventions. Some examples of digital technologies, Fashion Goes Digital. Good example here is for core textile people, you may not be able to relate to it. Companies like Premier and Data, they are doing a monitoring system for superior productivity, quality. There's real-time monitoring of spindle level data, benchmarking with best-in-class productivity, identifying bottlenecks, oriented production quality improvement. This company called Process, they build correlation between process quality and process control steps. So we are talking about online corrective measures to get product quality right first, to reduce rework, to reduce reprocessing charges, and to ensure that the cost of quality remains under control. Same thing, Beta has also what they call overall equipment reliability, real-time performance monitoring of key assumptions, condition-based monitoring of what we call RCM maintenance modules are all a part of Fashion Goes Digital. But beyond this is the whole issue of BI and BA, business analytics and business intelligence. And most companies are now using BI and BA to get to mining data, to be able to look at what consumers want. Now, what is the raw data? The raw data for this is your store POS, what we call point of sale machines. You could have a number of software there. You could have shoppers, you could have Oracle-based platforms for POS, what we call at the point at the billing times. So the data from your bills become very crucial. What have you bought? What is the kind of product you bought? And if you've got very refined techniques, maybe the product labeling of the product can also get incorporated in your POS. That means if there's a what we call a label indicating the blends you bought, or the kind of products you bought, or the wash care instructions, it can all get integrated if you have a sophisticated system. So people know what you're buying. And obviously, all of you are on Facebook, Instagram, right? So you know what happens with Instagram or Facebook? It's very interesting. The use of BA and BI is so high now that let's say you go shopping for a particular product today, and let's say you put some images on your phone. I can guarantee you that in the next 24 hours you get messages coming to you saying that there is this product available here and there. How does this happen? It's amazing. I remember I was once at Jakarta airport, and that's the time it hit me that why there's no privacy in your life agent, right? I was at Jakarta airport, and I was just about to leave, and I normally have this thing that I ask my daughter always, would you like something from here? Now, she will never bother. She'll say, yeah, Dad, I'll tell you. She never tells me. But on this occasion, when I was leaving the country, she called me and said, Dad, can you get me some bags? I said, I'm in the airport now, I'm going to leave. But then, airports have got good stores, but they're expensive. So I said, okay, doesn't matter. So I went, clicked a few pictures of some lovely bags, ethnic bags, Indonesian, what you get in Bali and all that. So I sent her the pictures. So she said, okay, Dad, get this. So I picked it up for her. Expensive. Not my choice of shopping, it's never airports, but I had no choice. Right? And the next day, I come back to India and I start getting bombarded with messages saying, you can get this here, you can get this here, you can get this. And this is the first time it hit me that how much your life and your choices and your behavior, You're watching things. You look at YouTube videos and all. All of you know Netflix, right? When you go to Netflix and you click on a program, what does it tell you? It tells you what is the percentage connect with your choices, right? How does it happen? You're using AI, right? So it's going to be really very pervasive in our lives. So having seen the trends, top things that demand the responsibility, circularity, innovation, sustainability. Remember these four things. This is going to determine the whole future of apparel and textile in the globe, in the world. That these are going to be the overarching themes that we are going to see being played out day in and day out by consumers, manufacturers, retailers, buying houses over the next few years. And of course, all of them. So fashion industry, are they synonymous or is it synonymous or is it an oxymoron? Let's go to the next slide. So fashion industry, if none of you knew, is the second most polluting industry after oil. Its social and environmental impacts are huge. Globally, 19% of all insecticides and 9% of all pesticides are used on cotton. So cotton is an extremely, we call it natural, great fiber, but it's one of the most polluting fibers on planet Earth. 25% of chemicals used globally is used in textile and apparel industry. And for all of you who are wearing jeans, many of you are, and so do I wear them. 1 kg of kg jeans cotton doesn't 200 kiloliters of water. And you know what is the future of water? I'm the chairman of the World Business Council for Water. Sustainable, WBS. By 2035, 50% of India will not have drinking water. 2035, that's not the corner. It's your time. You are, grown up, maybe have families of your own. 50% of India will not have drinking water. That's a crisis we face. And that is why it behoves us to become more and more conscious about consuming water. About consuming less water, recycling water, reusing water, etc. We as a company may not have even had to do zero liquid discharge in many of our factories. Costs a lot of money, both OPEX and CAPEX. But we are putting in zero liquid discharge so that we have become conscious to say that we will reuse every bit of water that we use in the system and reduce our intake water level over time. Fashion industry, what is in the supply chain? Low cost labor, proximity to source of raw material, fast fashion versus traditional model, volume versus quality, global supply chain versus short supply chains, standardization versus craftsmanship of the product. A lot of these things we've already talked about. So this is really the trend as it emerges. So globalization has led to fragmentation of the supply chain, displacing a great part of the manufacturing that was originally carried out locally to developing countries. And given this variety of business models and approaches, the fashion industry is now experiencing a change towards key success factors towards quality and responsibility. And consumers, consumers appreciate it. But the point is, are consumers willing to pay for it? That is the $1 million question with most retailers. Everyone says it's nice, good to have, but are you willing to pay for it? So that's really the test that we will see over the next few years. This is our sustainability journey. I started this journey in 2013, so it's been 8 years. And believe me, creating a sustainable corporation is not at all easy. Easier said than done. We moved from being zero on environmental sustainability to being now one of the leading companies globally. How many of you have heard of GRI? Does anyone know what is GRI? Are you covering it in your syllabus? GRI is Global Reporting Initiative. It's a global benchmark. So any company which is going to call itself sustainable, and let's say it's a retailer and wants the consumers to look at it favorably, has to be reporting its entire environmental story on GRI. So it's a public domain. You can go and open GRI. Suppose you want to see what Zara is doing on sustainability. Just go to GRI, Global Reporting Initiative. You can download all the reports of Zara. You can download all my reports for last 7 years of every unit of mine. And there are very few corporations in the world which are submitting today. So I have to report what am I doing on water, what am I doing on carbon footprint, what am I doing on waste, what am I doing on social matrices like labor, child labor, human, human practices. Everything gets covered. And most companies like ours, which are on Higg Index now, because the retailer now will only select vendors on the basis of Higg Index. Many of you, have you heard of SAC? SAC is Sustainable Apparel Coalition. So any company now which needs to be a sustainable organization in the global apparel retail supply chain needs to be Higg Index certified. Otherwise, retailers will not buy from those vendors if they are not Higg Index certified. I'm very happy to say that the business that I worked for more than 12 years, which was the pulp and fiber business, I created this brand of Birla Cellulose, is today considered the greenest fiber in the world. And this has been certified by the world's renowned Canopy. And it's the only organization which is a, what do they call it, a shirt, has been accorded dark green shirt. And this is the only organization, right? And the traceability is from forest to retail, to consume. So it's got a full green shirt. It's the only company even Lenzing is not certified as a full green shirt. Neither is any company in the world. It's the first company to get certified here. So we are an environmentally very sustainable corporation in Aditya Birla Group, and most of our companies are moving in the right direction to do the right things for the consumer. Next. Well, coming to one size doesn't fit all, change is coming whether you like it or not. Consumer interest in sustainability, increasing interest in corporate social responsibility, and from creating shareholders' wealth to creating shared value. This is going to be the trend for corporations. So this is what a responsible fashion company of 2030 will look. So look at it carefully. You've got to be in consonance with environment, society, culture, media, institutions. You've got to ensure that you have the right set of ethics, profitability, and aesthetics. All this will combine together to create the most responsible fashion company going forward. And to conclude, just like the power industry or the automobile industry is going to electric vehicle, power industry is going to green energy, fashion industry will embark towards green fashion, which is nothing but sustainable fashion. And organizations that get it right are the ones that will make a difference, survive and thrive. So if I have to capture the four essence of what I have discussed with you today, what are the positive messages? How companies that are going to survive and thrive need to walk the talk. Transparency and traceability will become the order of the day, because people will not just believe you, they will want to know that this can be audited and confirmed by some independent organization that yes, this company is doing what it says it does. Accessible information, synthetic and interactive, credibility, relevance, storytelling, courage, simplicity, emotion. These are going to be the values around which we are going to see the best companies come out as sustainable, innovative, responsible companies in the years ahead. This is something I do all the time because I'm a leadership coach, and I talk to a lot of groups of people, and particularly young students. So this is all about leadership in crisis. So, it's a very good take. Is it leadership in crisis? Which means somebody's name gets adored, or is it blood on the floor? Which means it's actually a leadership crisis. The structure of this presentation is, I'm going to talk to you about what is my definition of a crisis, what are lessons from crisis leadership of high performance, what are my personal mantras, and of course, Q&A if you guys have any questions. So what is a crisis? A show stopping, people stopping, product stopping, country stopping event. A significant business interruption. Could be a brand image or reputation management impact. They could be defining moments for a business, or for a country, or for people. And people will look up to you on how you respond to this crisis. These are some of the major elements. What I think are 5 leadership core competencies in a crisis is agility, communication, courage and perseverance, credibility, and emotional effectiveness. These are the qualities which come to fore in a leadership crisis. Believe me when I say that the COVID SARS-19 is one of the biggest black swan events to have ever hit planet Earth. I cannot remember, and I don't think even our previous 2-3 generations would have seen an event like this. So we are not fortunate that we have gone through an event which has brought the world to a standstill. In fact, there were 2 months in this last year when the entire planet Earth virtually came to a stop. And it did not differentiate between the rich and the poor. It did not differentiate between the rich countries and the poor countries. It did not differentiate between a developing or a developed world. It affected everyone. Every part of the world came to a standstill. So, I think in a sense, these are stories for your grandchildren to tell, because it's very unlikely that the world may go through another such event in the near future. So, what are the things that will see us through this? And that's really the, what is important for us to understand. So, what do I mean by agility? Safety has become a very, very important prerogative. Especially given the pandemic, how do you keep your employees, their families safe? How do you ensure stringent safety SOPs? So, in fact, your professors asked me today how are the factories running. He said before the factories were restarted after closure, we ensured that there were such stringent SOPs in place for offices, factories, warehouses, stores, that we ensured that if those SOPs were not being followed, you will not open shop. And the purpose of that is you need to ensure that your employees, their families, your vendors, your customers who come to your stores are kept safe. So, safety was very important, keeping people at center stage. So, we look at the whole ecosystem, employees, customers, service providers, and understand their pain points from the point of view of what they're feeling today. Experiment and learn rapidly by experimenting frequently, making safe to fail controlled experiments. Remember one thing, as you go through life, there are people who will say, I don't want to try it. I don't want to, because I'm scared I'll fail. But I think the right attitude is try something, even if you fail. And then learn from that failure to make sure you don't repeat the same mistakes again. Because there's a saying in English, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Many of you would have heard it, right? And that's really true. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. But there's another saying, there is no gain without. Yeah, that's right. Good. Remember that. Okay. All right. People aren't afraid of failure. They are afraid of blame. So never blame. If you are a supervisor to somebody and you are giving them the empowerment to try and experiment, always make sure that you encourage them and just ask them to learn from even a failure. I don't know whether you people have heard this story, but I would encourage all of you to go to my YouTube channel. It's under my name. You will see a lot of leadership videos there. It is one very good example I'm fond of talking about. When Abdul Kalam was in the space agency, he had a boss, and they had one of the biggest rocket launches. I don't know which one it was, GSLV or ESLV, I don't know which one. Everything was set, years of effort had gone. And the launch took place, and within a few minutes the launch failed, for whatever reasons. The boss took the entire blame for the failure. He did not pass it on to Abdul Kalam because Abdul Kalam was the project head, but the boss took the blame. A couple of years later, when they had the relaunch, I think it was GSL, and it was a great success. Everything went well, everything went well. This boss gave the entire credit to Abdul Kalam and his team. So, this is the kind of behavior we wish to see in leaders of people. Empower people, let them make mistakes, but at the same time, don't discourage them from making experiments, because then you'll never have creativity, you'll never have innovation, right? Next. Can you see the difference between these two? It's very topical. Have you seen the leadership styles? They're like chalk and cheese, right? One guy is an absolute autocrat, whereas the other guy is become, over years, an extremely participative decision maker, politician, etc. Very important to understand why some shine and some fail. And some shine and some fail, but they take the whole set of their shareholders with them, stakeholders with them. Be courageous and mentally tough, communicate. One of the important things about good leadership is unconditional honesty and trust. Be authentic and emphatic. Don't try to copy anyone else. Be yourself. And if there are chinks in your armor, figure out what those chinks are and try to overcome. Understand and fall in love with we, not I. And that's very important, because the world going forward is going to be more collaborative. It's not going to be about me alone. It's going to be about how we work as a team, how do we work as a community, how do we work as a structured society. You can imagine, the classic example of this is in front of you. Do you think that we can face the COVID pandemic alone? So what will it take to overcome the COVID pandemic? Is it a family? Is it an individual? Is it a community? Or is it the entire communities of human beings have to come together to overcome the crisis, right? So that's exactly the message that we're talking about today. And this is true notwithstanding the pandemic, right? And impressions matter. Your values will always get displayed. You know, we think sometimes as people in power that we can do whatever we want. As we see, many of our politicians do. But the reality is, at the end of the day, everyone is watching. We cannot ever think that we are not being watched. And there is always people who are observing every move you make, particularly of leaders. And I think it's very important for us to see that we not only walk the talk, we display authentic behavior, and we always show kindness, humility, and compassion towards others. Those are the things that will matter going forward. Be careful of the pitfalls. Avoid obfuscation, avoid playing the blame game, avoid complaining. Take responsibility for yourself. Even if it doesn't involve you, you can do what you can do to change the situation around you. Nobody else can, only you can, so you should work with it. Next. Courage and perseverance. The only true measure of courage is perseverance under pressure. You'll see that some people do very well in normal circumstances. But the best way of testing their leadership quality is under stress. How do they behave under stress? Many people crack up completely. They don't even know what to do. I mean, they lose total bandwidth to do anything. So I think true leadership comes in a time of crisis when there's so much pressure on you and you are expected to lead and make the right choices. And that is the true test of leadership. So you persevere when you show courage in your attitude, be diligent, put in maximum effort, demonstrate endurance, be resilient, set goals and have a vision on what to do. There is a saying in English, there is no substitute for hard work and commitment. So what we say, it's not 99% inspiration, but it is 100% perspiration. And that really is commitment and hard work. So no matter what you do, it reminds me, once my daughter came and said, Dad, I want to make money. So I said, good, work hard, and make money. No, I want to make money without working hard. I said, that's not possible. You got to work hard, no matter what you do, whichever stream of life you choose to undertake, you've got to work hard. So yeah, so it's not about inspiration, but it's about a lot of perspiration. Build credibility. Earn respect is what you do. Let people see you as sincere and authentic. Avoid being judgmental and keep all your commitments. And certainly do not stretch the truth. Emotional effectiveness, what does it take? Be balanced. Most important, be patient, remain calm and composed. Think before you act, and when you can't decide, take time to validate. These are very, very important in what is becoming more and more important in leadership, which is emotional maturity. Very important. Easier said than done, but it really takes a lot to become emotionally mature. It takes a lot of discipline amongst us. So these are my 10 commandments. Now you will have this copy of presentation also. Maybe you can keep it with you. Look at it. Have a crisis management plan. Communicate openly, honestly. Set a level down. Be brave. Be agile. Be action-based. Have a crisis management team because you can't do everything alone. Practice, train, and huddle. Have one voice. Be compassionate, and lastly, do not blame. If you have a failure, accept it and move on. That's it. All of you know what is VUCA, right? If you didn't know, here's the definition of VUCA. You'll hear this word got a lot of times. The VUCA word is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Now, VUCA word did not exist many years ago. But practically now, we are living consistently through the VUCA word. So it is not just the COVID pandemic, even a few years before it, have experienced large volatility in the markets. Whether it's commodity prices, whether it is oil and crude. All of you know that oil prices went to negative. Do you know that? It was negative. That means somebody has to pay the petroleum companies have to pay somebody to take away crude, right? Who would have thought that was ever possible? But it did happen. And it happened before the COVID crisis. It didn't have anything to do with the COVID crisis. Okay, next. So you can see how the skills are getting changed, These are the skills which are relevant in 2015. And these are the skills which are relevant in 2020. So you see where the difference is coming. Cognitive flexibility and emotional intelligence. Because many of the other things continue to remain. And I would say agility in a very big way. This probably is not figuring here. But we need to be far more agile today. And maybe it's getting covered under cognitive flexibility, but you need to be agile. While results are important, so is the process. All of you have seen the movie Pearl Harbor? Have you seen the movie Pearl Harbor? It's about the Second World War. It's about how the Japanese hit the American naval base in Pearl Harbor, which is in Hawaii. Right? If you see, it was inconceivable that the Japanese could bring their flotilla of ships and submarines all the way from Japan to Pearl Harbor, which is in the Hawaiian Islands, unnoticed, undetected, and launch a full-rate attack on Pearl Harbor. So it was not about the outcome or the end result, it was about the planning and the process which made Pearl Harbor a great success for the Japanese. Of course, the fact is, they had to pay very heavily through the atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki as a consequence. But the fact is that the attack on Pearl Harbor was completely a success. They wiped out virtually the entire American fleet at Hawaii. Every crisis is information. Leaders write the wave of change and create the change. And therefore, a crisis is a good period for leaders to emerge. That's why we say don't waste a crisis. Next. So what are the major changes? Global reordering, power of big data, like I said, artificial intelligence, machine language, Internet of Things, redesign business models, because business models are changing every day. Who would have thought there will be a service like Dunzo? How many of you use Dunzo? In Bangalore, I believe it's very popular. A mother makes a nice dish and she Dunzos it to her daughter living somewhere else. Right? Inconceivable a few years ago. I've come to office, I've forgotten my charger at home, my wife does those things. 30 rupees, 40 rupees, nothing. Right? So, business models are getting restructured every day. And really, the world is changing as we move. And many ways to manage and new ways to lead. And very important to manage and create happiness. And that's the way you would see good leadership happen. What is important is don't limit your imagination and take stretch goals. Only when you aspire high will you hit even somewhere close to it. You know, I must tell you this. Very early on in my corporate life, we went through a session with a very famous world company. I don't remember which one it was. It was one of the best companies in the world looking at development. So they have an exercise called ring toss exercise. So what do? They have pegs and you toss a ring, right? What is the purpose? To try to get the ring to go into the peg. Now, it's interesting, they don't tell you where to toss it. And that's where you see human behavior. So there are some leaders who want to toss it from 2 feet. There are some leaders who want to toss it from 4 feet. And there are some idiots like me who want to toss it from 10 feet. Right? So that shows your stretch of imagination. Okay. So the guys who are tossing it from 2 feet know they're going to peg it. Right? So they're not willing to take any risk. They're not willing to stretch themselves. So I think this is really what is the power of big data. As you use big data, you will find that there are so many opportunities for you to. We took up a very tough task. When we make acrylic fiber, we use acrylonitrile. The prices of acrylonitrile have been extremely volatile in the last 10 years. There are times when it goes up, there are times when it goes. Nobody can predict. We work with our big data analytics. We have a big data analytics team in the other development. We worked with them for 1 year to try and forecast this price of ASIC. Because the price of ASIC actually determines the profit of my business. If I don't buy right, I really get hammered, absolutely hammered, when the P&L comes out every month at the end. So there is a lot of power in big data. Next. Building a new business model. Persons who understand data analytics and understand the customers and their what we call customers journey. Without database going forward will be difficult models to be developed fast as they become irrelevant in a VUCA world. So it's not a static model, it's a dynamic model we're looking at. And use the power of algorithms to test proof of concept. Very good example, 58% of Amazon is from third party. And can you imagine that Walmart is going to healthcare? Exactly what Steve said here. And that's really going to be the future of tomorrow. Next. How to develop new business models? We need to do it from within. We need to take a value chain approach end to end. The CEO has to lead and not just the digital head. It is not about mastering the business model, but it's about understanding the whole business nuances. Use technology to develop the cockpit, connect with end users and end customers. And voice of customer is very, very important. And what is very important in anything to do with data is have a single source of truth. Don't have multiple sources of truth because you never get alignment around the whole team. Next. What is happiness? Success creates energy, get right people in the right job, teach your people new skills, cross-functional task forces, make teams and facilitate new learnings, and leaders should develop a lot of their time for their teams to succeed. That is really the mantra for creating happiness in the years ahead. The seed of the future exists today. Seeds don't grow without human beings developing them. So that, in a sense, is taking off from where Shilpa started off today in the presentation. Next. Okay, this is really the sum and substance of my life's lessons. And I've already shared it with you, but I believe you can become great human beings, you can become great leaders if you practice these three qualities: being mindful, listening intently, and suspending fear. To me, these not only make you great human beings, they will also make you great leaders in the years to come. But all these are different. I could give you n number of examples of this, which I don't have time for today. But if you go through my YouTube videos, you'll find answers to all. There are many of, and of course LinkedIn. I've got probably more than 1,000 videos up on LinkedIn. So go through that and practice this. It will make you a better human being. It will make you a better husband, a better wife, a better sister, a better daughter, a better son, whatever. Practice these three things and very fun. Next. So in summary, all that I've talked about today, this is the new reality. Create your own momentum and energy, plan for the unplanned. Remember, health is wealth, so protect yourself, stay safe, stay blessed, and stay safe and happy. I think that's the last one. Now, this is one of my bosses in the past. He said this to me, so I recorded it. A leader creates a vision and sets milestones. A leader brings change to the mindset of the group, motivates and supports the group to deliver superior performance by setting his or her own example. He's an MIT graduate. He studied with Mr. Aditya Birla at MIT and has been one of the most inspiring bosses that I've had in my career. So, a great human being. Thanks. Okay, so happy to connect with all of you. There's my Instagram address. My Instagram is very eclectic. I'm a cook, photographer, traveler, music lover, so on and so forth. I'm on LinkedIn, which is with my name. And of course, I'm not on Facebook, but I'm on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. I'll be happy. You'll have to make a request because these are all private accounts.